So today I'm going to share the story of what led me to becoming a coach who works with startup founders. So I've been in startups for about 10 years now, and I started my first company when I was living in New York, and that was a company called Fitocracy. I was the co-founder and CEO there, which is a hilarious title when you're 24 and you're just two people and you have no idea what you're doing. But that's kind of just the way it goes when you're starting early stage companies. And I had the very good fortune to build that business into something that lasted for about 5 years. Now I could spend a whole separate video on the ups and downs of that company. But we built it into a real thing. We built it into a community of over 2 million users who were trying to reach certain health and fitness goals and an audience around that. Um, and that business ultimately came to an end after about 5 years. And during that time, it was particularly in the latter years where I was undergoing a lot of stress. I had fellow founders and investors and teammates and family to help support me, but there came a time where there was just a crisis point for me personally, it felt like. And that's when I engaged with my first executive coach, a wonderful, wonderful woman named Anamaria Nina Murcio, sorry. And I had never worked with a coach before. I had no idea what to expect. But when I decided to partner with Anna Maria, all I knew is that I needed additional support to help me get through that set of challenges that I was facing at the time. What she gave me was a space to help me learn um, more about myself, learn more about the skills of emotional intelligence and awareness and communication and getting the interpersonal piece of it right, as she would say. By the way, you should check her out. She runs an awesome coaching business called Fortlight. Lovely, lovely people over there. And this is what they focus on, which is getting interpersonal component of startups, right? And so I spent a year working with Anna Maria, and it was so transformative for me. And I think, if nothing else, because it helped me step into my own self when communicating with others, setting boundaries, declaring my needs, giving feedback, regulating my own emotional state, which was really just up and down constantly, mostly down, if I'm being honest, when I was the CEO. And so um, that time with Anna Maria was some of the most impactful for my own personal growth. So fast forward a little bit, Photocracy comes to an end late 2015, and I moved over from New York to the Bay Area, which is where I am now. And I was kind of not sure what to do with myself. I just spent 5 years working on this business and nothing to show for it in a certain sense. Um, it wasn't a success. And so usually when founders have successful companies, there's a whole range of options that are available to them. They may end up starting another company. They might join a venture firm as a partner, depending on how successful that company was. They might go on to become an executive at another startup, or any number of things. For me, I was kind of figuring that all out, and fortunately, was able to jump aboard with the folks over at 500 Startups, which was one of our earliest investors. And it was, to be totally honest with you, it was a year where I was able just to reset. I was transitioning into a new state, and a new time in my life where I wasn't identifying as a founder. And I got to spend this year working with other founders, um, dreamers, builders, creators, people who were trying to make a dent in the universe, so to speak. And I had this privilege of supporting them as they were building their companies. And I loved it. I loved getting to spend that time and share that space with other founders, on their own journeys. What I didn't like as a VC was the fact that you had to spend most of your time sourcing deals and then ultimately saying no to the vast, vast majority of those entrepreneurs. it just wasn't a good energy for me to have to constantly reject or constantly look for the reasons I'm going to have to say no, just the way venture capital works. So I ultimately decided to leave 500 startups, and then I pursued a career in product management. And at the time, my narrative was, hey, I really miss building, I really miss shipping, I really miss working with engineers and designers and marketers and stakeholders and getting software out to the world. And so I spent a couple years doing that. First, I was at a company called Credit Karma, and then I was at a company called Eaze. And, you know, learned an enormous amount through that time period. But probably one of the most important things was I learned that it wasn't something that got me excited. Not to mention, it just wasn't something that I found I was particularly good at. To be totally honest with you, I'm not the world's greatest PM, and I found that if I wanted to be that, sure, that'd be one thing, and maybe I could go and continually get better at that craft. But I just didn't have an interest in it as I was thinking about what the next few years were going to look like for me. So I got to a point where I was a little bit back to the drawing board. What do I do with myself? What's my life gonna be spent doing? And I remember I was getting coffee with a friend of mine, a VC who runs his own fund, and at the time I was thinking maybe I want to go back to VC. Maybe that's the long-term career that I really belong in. And I remember asking him, what it might look like for me to go down that path, what are the options available to me, et cetera. And he stopped me and he said, Brian, why do you want to go into VC? And I said, I really want to support founders on their journeys. And I'll never forget this. He told me that if I wanted to do that, don't go into VC. I should become a coach. And it was just this one of those moments where everything suddenly made sense. And it was um, this perspective that was so obvious in retrospect, but just completely outside of my awareness at the time. And I knew what coaching was. I'd worked as a client, with Anamaria for a year. I had this inkling that it was going to be something that I found a lot of joy in, and also an intuition that it was something I was going to be really, really talented in, really, really impactful in. And I took a step back and I asked myself, what is the work that I am going to love doing for the next 10 years? I also asked myself questions like, what is the work that's going to be most meaningful to you? What is the work that you're going to love to do? What is the work that, of course, you can make a career out of? And all of it fell into place when I saw coaching, when I saw what it was. Because coaching isn't about having all the answers. Coaching isn't about teaching or telling. It's about partnering with somebody to help them grow into the person that they want to be in order to achieve what they want in life. In my case, it happens to be focused on the realm of startups, but coaching is a field that can apply to pretty much anything imaginable. And so, given my background as a founder and a VC and a PM, I knew I had experience that was actually kind of rare among executive and startup coaches. I have always valued introspection and self-awareness and emotional intelligence and the inner work, let's call it, but just never knew how I could apply that anywhere, in a career. And the thing that people would often say when they were giving me feedback and saying, "Hey, Brian, here's what stands out about you," was the fact that I was somebody who expressed a huge amount of empathy and vulnerability. And I would hear that. I'm like, cool, that's great. Like I can create space for people. I just don't know, what I'm supposed to do with that. Turns out that is a core component of what makes for an effective coach. And so now I've been doing this for a couple of years, and I can very, very easily say that my hunch about whether or not this would be something I love to do, something that I'm good at doing, something that is making an impact and I care about, all that turned out to be true. So that's a little bit of what got me into coaching. I didn't spend any time talking about what it is actually or how it works or what is it that I do specifically, but I'll make some further videos on those topics as well. But wanted to just share a little bit of the story of what led me to that decision point. Maybe down the line, I'll talk a little bit more specifically about what those steps were in the earliest days. So anyways, thanks for watching and see you in the next one.